Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on journalists and independent media operating in exile, hosted by the National Press Club. We're joined today by four such brilliant journalists who were forced to leave their countries and have recalibrated their networks and their newsrooms outside their homes. And it is my privilege to moderate this discussion on behalf of Report for the World, a global journalism service program that supports specialized reporters at 32 independent media across the globe, including 5 newsrooms operating in exile. And so in the interest of time, I'll jump straight into the introductions. Maria, if we could start with you. You're a journalist with experience in national and international media. You were a correspondent for Univision Network in Managua and a specialist working on the professionalization of media in your country. Could you share the details of your forced departure from Nicaragua? In your case, you were criminalized by the prosecutor's office of the regime of Daniel Ortega. And this sounds very familiar to the experiences of Divergentes that we're currently supporting, also a Nicaraguan media operating in exile from Costa Rica, with also staff in Mexico and Europe. Is this type of tactic used regularly by the state to oust journalists and voices of opposition? Could you tell us how and where you were able to set up your new home to be able to continue your work?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to learn from all the countries, and all the great journalists who are being persecuted too. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Nicaragua. If I read a little bit, to go straight, because sometimes explaining our country is a little bit complicated. And in my case, I was summoned and questioned by the prosecutor office back then in May 2021. The prosecutor office, of course, is controlled by the dictatorship of President Daniel Ortega and his wife, the Vice President Rosario Murillo. This was the arbitrary case about the Fundación Violeta Chamorro Foundation, which was an NGO which promoted freedom of the press and freedom of expression for the last 25 years. Back then, when I was summoned, I demand the right to have a lawyer. And since I demand that right, the prosecutor office changed my condition from being they changed my condition from being a witness to being investigated on this arbitrary case of money laundering. This is a fabricated crime that the regime created because the regime used this case in order to persecute, threaten dozens of journalists back then in May 2021. So this was the second wave of repression from the regime that this repression started back then in April 2018, when there was this social protest, and the regime did like a violent response that nowadays we have more than 300 persons who were assassinated at that time, and those deaths are in total impunity, including a journalist was killed when he was doing a Facebook Live in April 2018, and also 21 police officers. But in 2021, the regime unleashed the second wave of repression against all critical voices, leader of opposition, and of course, when in late May or the beginning of June of 2021, the regime started detaining, everyone who was investigated, the condition of being investigated in this arbitrary case of the Chamorro Foundation. I decided that it was time to leave, as painful as it was, because there was no other choice. It was jail or it was exile, and it was really hard to do that decision because you don't want to leave your country. You still want to report underground, report. In my case, I was reporting for Univision, the Spanish network, And so that was the case, like it was in that year, the regime detained arbitrarily at least between 60 and 100 opposition leaders from all that represent, like all the society. It was businessmen, journalists, leader oppositions, leader of activists, human rights activists, lawyers, diplomats. It was all former diplomats, priests. It was all kind of a variety of representation of society. In that context, I was forced to live as dozens of journalists of my countries. Just to finish, at this time, at least I'm one of the 180 or at least 200 journalists who are in exile reporting about the crisis in Nicaragua.
And could you quickly run us through what your situation is at the moment in terms of your status? You're in the US, in Florida, I gather. How were you able to work from there? Are you able to continue your work?
Well, I have been working as a media consultant, and also with some colleagues, we create a digital platform called Huellas de Impunidad. It is to trace the impunity. So we do a special reports about the systematic human crisis and violations in Nicaragua, and it has been hard, to tell you the truth, but I know that in some cases, some of my colleagues who are like in Costa Rica and in Spain, they have faced, like more difficult situations. Until now, I can say that I am, I have a work permit, that arrived recently. So until now, you think you are able to get, after almost 2 years, to get, a driver license. So it's trying. I don't know about my other colleagues, but try to work and be able to establish abroad, and at the same time continue, reporting about your country, because the thing is that you go outside and you decide, as painful as it is, to go into exile, because you don't want to be silenced. You want to keep reporting somehow. You want to put, you want to be one of those voices reporting the abuses in your country. But at the same time, you're dealing with the basic things. Where do you live? How do you survive? So it has been a challenge.
Thank you for that. And I'd love to go into the details of some of the work you're continuing to carry out. But what you're talking about brings to my mind the experience of one of our newsroom partners from Afghanistan, Exile, whose staff stayed in Kabul until the Taliban takeover in the summer of 2021, and they were finally forced to flee. The founder is now in the US, but on a parole, quote unquote, parole status, which makes his situation precarious. And he's also unable to travel, which means that his work is restricted as well. So I've been hearing about US senators calling for a new limited visa category to protect human rights defenders from across the globe, journalists included, which allows a multi-year, multiple entry visa. So I hope those efforts come through. As I can see, taking 2 years to just get your driver's license is really not a reasonable pace. But the situation seems a little bit more agile in Europe, of course, depending on the member country. Muhammad John, if I could turn to you for your own experiences as a Tajik journalist who had to move to Poland. You're not just a journalist, but you're also an actively engaged human rights defender. Alongside your work as editor-in-chief at Azda TV, a Tajik language news network based in Poland, you're also the president of a foundation that assists refugees with resettlement. So you must be closely familiar with the asylum and resettlement policies. How did they work in practice for you? Have they changed? And are they allowing journalists and newsroom founders to reestablish or register their outlets more easily now?
Thank you, Priti, for introduction. And first of all, I would like to thank National Press Club for inviting me here for this opportunity. My history, why have been forced to leave Tajikistan or to become exiled. Before escaping to Poland, we were based in Moscow. In 2014, in the beginning of 2014, we registered and established first Central Asian satellite TV, independent satellite TV channel in Russia, which were covering the whole Central Asian country. And after 1.5 years of operation in February 2016, by the request of Tajikistan regime, the security service of Russia closed our office or studio in Moscow and confiscated all property. And that day I was in Turkey. And that was the beginning of the becoming exile. So first 2 years, we were busy relocating our journalists from Russia to Ukraine, to Turkey, and then to the European Union. For your information, Tajikistan is controlled by the longest ruling dictator in post-Soviet countries, Emil Rahman, being in power since 1992. And this year, it is his 31 years of ruling period. So he's in the power more than Putin and Lukashenko in Belarus. And if you see Tajikistan, you will find all kind of dictatorship in this country. This is the country, the dictatorship, autocracy, nepotism, and kleptocracy. Find all this in because his son is second person, speaker of the Senate. His daughter is chief of the staff, president office. So that's why it is almost impossible for journalism to operate inside country. That's why we established our media in Moscow. Even it's impossible to operate in whole post-Soviet country, and you become exiled in the European Union. We thought when we become exiled, so maybe we have some protection, we'll be safe to operate, but unfortunately, even far from country, living in Europe or US does not provide you protection from the authoritarian regime in countries, because they will go after your relative, after your dependent. They will confiscate your property. They will, even target you outside in the exile. We have been changing twice our office in Poland because we were, attacked by the spy an agent of the Tajikistan regime. So that's the short background about establishing, registering the outlet and news agencies in exile. It's a huge challenge. First, relocation, and also refugee process because of the less information. Many people, when they come from Tajikistan, they said, there are no war in Tajikistan, why you become refugee? So many times your case will be refused. For many times you're gonna be in the processing, in limbo situation for a long period. But when you receive your status as a refugee, it will, for example, if you are in Europe, it will limit your travel beyond the European border. If you want to travel to UK, you need to apply for visa, or to the United States or any other country. So because you are a refugee, they see you as a potential immigrant or refugee in other country. For example, I've been living in US in the past for 4 years. I got visa easily, but for my fellowship, my visa subjected to the administrative processing, and I didn't receive visa on time, and participating virtually from Poland. So that's another problem for being journalist in exile. And about registration, still we don't have any clear vision which institution is best or fit for journalism to be registered. For example, foundation, institution, maybe commercial one. But during my fellowship, one of my topic is that to find out what best of the form of institution is good for journalism to operate in exile. So this is, I hope I answered your questions. I have a lot of things to say, but the time
absolutely.
is very short.
And what you're saying is very much resonates with a lot of the newsrooms in exile that we've been talking to, that they prefer not to apply for asylum because the refugee status prevents them and is discriminatory in a lot of ways. So an example that actually comes to my mind, also in a European setting, and perhaps that's one worth looking at, is a program that the Czech government set up. It translates roughly to the civil society program, and it provides a waiver of sorts for activists and reporters from Russia and Belarus, for example, and it allows them to get visas despite the overall immigration and visa ban for Russian citizens in particular. And actually, one of our newsroom partners has benefited from this, and they were able to set up their newsroom in Prague. So it seems like these kind of shorter initiatives that are easier to deploy are super beneficial for journalists because their early recovery becomes super important so that they can stay in the profession, right? So, Soni, I'm sure some of these stories ring a bell for you because you've had to do this a few times yourself, but your own experience was quite stark. You had to serve 8 years in prison for purportedly bypassing censorship regulations when you were working at the Myanmar Times, yet you managed Frontier Myanmar, one of the most important media startups to emerge from the country. And we're thrilled to have you as one of our partners at Report for the World. It's been quite the journey for you since trying to figure out how to run in English language publication before the reform period to then the coup d'etat. Could you walk us through this very complex timeline and your current status? You're operating in Thailand. What does that look like? And are you able to continue your work without obstacles?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to talk about the situation in our country and the media landscape in our country. So this is the first time actually I don't have any exile experience like my peers college, but it's been a very interesting journey since the coup happened in 2021 February. We remained in the country for about 8 months because we wanted to stay inside the country and report because we thought that was important. But then, it gets tougher and tougher. So, at the end, we decided to leave. We weren't facing only the coup. The coup is on top of the pandemic, COVID second wave. That was it's pretty tough. Difficult to travel, difficult to, all the embassies are closed, and we have to move around all the time and in hiding. Every 3-4 days we move around, stuff like that. But then things get tougher, and then there were signs that they were after Frontier Myanmar and our reporters. That's when we decided to move to Thailand. And we have a saying in Burmese that the blind people never scare of ghosts because we can't see it. So it's the same thing. I didn't know what to expect being in the exile, and I thought it was the same team, the same content, same publication, yeah, we can do it. But it was quite difficult. I think I will start with the language. We don't speak the language, and everything is it's new for us, and we are still testing the water every day. Every day is a brand new learning curve for us. I think the bigger decision that we made for myself and for my staffs is not to cross the border, to fly into Thailand, because it's a simple mathematics. If we travel by road, it would take about 14 days crossing the border, and then the risk is 14 days. If we leave by the airport, then the risk is about 4 hours, right? And when everything is happening, we were taking the risks, and we decided to fly in. So at least we arrive in Thailand with the tourist visa, right? So instead of undocumented a person, I think at least we have a tourist visa, and we have a stay visa. But then, starting, I have a lot of friends. I'm very thankful for that. My editorial advisor is a Thai citizen, and he is a big support of our relocation. And having a Thai citizen as advisor, it's such a plus for everything he's been advising about security, legalization, legality, and settling in, and where to base and everything, So I spoke to him a lot before the relocation, and then we managed to set up an entity in Thailand, and then we basically operate out of Thailand, and at least we didn't really have to stay in hiding. At least we can travel quite freely. But then, to be honest, we can't really be journalists here. We are all studying here. So basically it's in a very gray area, but we have to be very careful. We don't want to piss anyone off. We want to live under the radar as much as possible. But everything is still challenging in terms of when the coup happened with the pandemic, the whole team gets sick, and then we were on the run. So it was quite difficult to regroup. Even after we landed Thailand, I came ahead of everyone. Then I slowly bring people out of Myanmar, my team, and but then the problem was. We don't really know what to do. We know we want to still cover everything about Myanmar, but then everything is done via Zoom, and all my editors they left and they went home. So at one stage, I was dealing with 8 different time zones. So it's very, very difficult. It was very difficult to motivate my team via Zoom and so forth. So at the end, I call everyone to meet in Chiang Mai. So that's how we regroup, and then we have a proper strategy to basically start producing the news again. Are we safe? Are we okay? I think we are as good as we can be. I don't think we are completely safe, and my team doesn't really want to go to the third country. So, we are all very hopeful that things will basically come down very soon. That was right after we moved here. So nobody wants to go to the US or the other countries. But then we're starting to realize that things are not going to slow down, and things are not going to be easy. We won't be able to leave, go home. in very near future. So we have to think of another long-term plan. At this point, everything is a temporary status, like Lily was saying, like Mohammed is saying, it's difficult because all the basic little small things like language, driving license, the house rental, everything has to be, you have to start your life from the beginning. And, the visa, like you really have to do visa runs and keep your status legal all the time. So we spend a lot of time going to the immigration department and so forth. These are the things that we didn't have to worry back home, but we are actually starting to get used to it. And even though, no matter how difficult it is, I think this is still, Thailand is still a safe haven because we have electricity, we have internet, banking system is good here. So compared to Yangon, Myanmar, my country, here is a lot better to operate. So we've been back to full swing for a year and a half already. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sonia. And you brought up a lot of different aspects of the challenges, especially sort of the obscure or the vague status as, students. And I should also note that Thailand, while the country has hosted refugees from Myanmar, different ethnic minority groups as well, for decades, they are not officially a signatory to the UN Refugee Convention. So when I was working there as a journalist focused on refugee issues, I saw that there'd be illegal raids on NGOs, on media outlets, and expulsions of people back into Myanmar. So there's always that risk, even if it's not immediate. And within that context, Sonia, I'd love to get back to you on how collaborations are important. But before that, if I could introduce Masrat, who has built an impressive career as a photojournalist in the world's most militarized zone, the Indian-administered part of Kashmir. Masrat, you were forced to leave because of persecution. Could you tell us how the Indian government authorities prevented you from doing your work? And I imagine there were some gendered components to the harassment that you've endured. How were you able to leave the country? And what are your options now?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Preeti, for the introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here and to speak about Kashmir, because right now the journalism in Kashmir has been criminalized. And I think there is no report coming out of Kashmir, what's happening there, what are people facing right now. And then, like to speak here at this platform, it's like, it's wonderful. In 2021 March, when the whole world was grappled with COVID, I decided to stay back home, like not to go out, because like I'm a visual journalist, I can cover the aftermath and everything. So I used social media to disseminate the news and to upload my archived work. So in April 2021, I was persecuted by the Indian government, but under the UAPA, that's Unlawful Activities in Prevention Act. So there is a new amendment to this act that the Union government can designate individuals as terrorists without following any judicial procedures, legal judicial procedures. So like basically I was a terrorist, not a journalist who was uploading pictures on social media to induce you towards the terrorism. So they referred me as a Facebook user, not as a journalist. But because of the support of people, there was this hashtag running on my name that I stand with Masrat Zahra. And that was a backlash on government, and they couldn't arrest me, but I was interrogated. I was questioned at the police station. And then I thought I should continue my work. But at the same time, there was this poster with my picture that was circulated on social media that this journalist is working under the payroll of India. So this is the last warning to this journalist. So that there was a death threat from a Malaysia group, Hizbul Mujahideen. So that, but then the Hizbul Mujahideen is coming, that Malaysia group is coming with a statement that we have nothing to do with this poster. These are the Indian agencies who are trying to defame us. They want to kill this journalist and they want to blame on us. So like then the government is offering me the police protection. But I mean, as you know, that it's difficult for a journalist to work with the police protection in a militarized zone when the police is the enemy of the people. They won't allow you to like, yeah, do the stories, do the work, or like work in the field. So my work as a visual journalist, like I have to be on ground. I have to talk to people. It's not like I will call or make some calls and yeah, do my work. So I had to say no to the police protection. But later in my neighborhood, a human rights lawyer was killed. Like somebody came to his home and he was shot dead in front of his 2 little daughters. And then the next day I'm getting again call from the police station that we are offering you the police protection because you will get killed. So it's high time. So you have to be safe or not to go out. So basically I was being silenced and they were telling me just to stay home, not to go out, not to do your work. So it was taking toll on my mental health, thinking of the safety of my family. So they have nothing to do with my professionalism. It's my choice to be a journalist, to be the voice of people. So I am like, again, thinking of the safety of like somebody will come to my home and they will kill my parents, or like, yeah, my family will get hurt. So I was reaching out to the organizations. I know that there is this organization I was awarded by that organization, IWMF. I reached out to them. They connected me with this the NGO in Germany that help the persecuted people. They give this basically the shelter and a refuge for 1 year only. So I decided, okay, yeah, I should like at least try to like, yeah, to get the visa and to like see if it works, because I knew that I have like my name is on the list, and then yeah, I'll be on the radar, so I won't be able to leave the country. So but I took the risk. I got the visa, and then I cleared the immigration with this fear, oh, I'll be stopped. There will be this scene at the airport when I'll be stopped from traveling. So nothing happened. I went to Germany for 1 year. Then the government back home came to know, oh, she has left. So there is this, the list from the government, the no-fly list, no evacuation list. So my name is on the list. And there are many other people who are on the list who tried to travel from Kashmir. So they were stopped at immigration without giving any reason. So yeah. And I was like, I didn't have any other option other than like, yeah, because my visa was valid for only 1 year. So I was reaching out to people, to the organization, to the director of the program, how to extend my stay, because this is not the right time when I can go back home. And also living with the whole thing that as a journalist, as a visual journalist who used to be on ground 24, like anytime, like anything is happening, you're there, and then you're reporting, you're shooting the pictures, then I'm like away from my work. I'm not able to do anything, and then scrolling and going through the newsletters, the social media, and looking at the pictures and the work of other journalists, of like my colleagues. It was really tough on me. I mean, it's been like 3 years since I have touched my camera. So yeah, I mean, then
I can imagine that that's a really tough situation. And I actually wanted to get back to you on the type of work you're doing. But if I may turn quickly to Lily, who's sort of a little bit in the next phase as you, right, Masrat, in the sense that Lily, you have a new home base, somewhat established. And so continuing your work, of course, becomes important. I'm sure it comes with its own set of challenges. As Masrat said, she's very field-based, so it's almost impossible for her to carry out her work at the moment, at least in the same way. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the project that you founded, Derecho a Preguntar, because it reminds me of one of the projects that our newsroom partners in Mexico, Quinto Elemento Lab, are carrying out. It's called ¿A dónde van los desaparecidos? So where are the disappeared? To explore, because enforced disappearances, especially of journalists, as you mentioned earlier, is such a big issue, and with impunity in Latin America. How are you continuing some of this work on shedding light on the human rights violations that continue to take place?
Well, actually, the project is Huellas de Impunidad. Derecho a Preguntar was, like a project that it's not working anymore because, since in Nicaragua, we have to understand that freedom of the press and freedom of expression has been criminalized. So I identify a lot with Zara, because, well, in my case, I couldn't be able to get out through the airport because the prosecutor office, imposed me repressive measures as I was banned to leave the country. My bank accounts were frozen, and I was prohibited to go outside of my house. So in an explicit way, it was a house arrest. Just to for the record. So with Huellas de Impunidad, it's a platform that, of course, through special reports, we are trying to be the first draft of history. I think in a way what my other colleagues in a way are doing every day, which is like more challenging, I would say, for some colleagues, which are like reporting every day. We try to report through our social media, but at least Huellas de Impunidad is not like a breaking news, I really admire my colleagues because you have to understand also that in Nicaragua, there is no newspaper. All the independent media outlets have been confiscated. The oldest newspaper, like La Prensa, for example, was RIDE. This is the first dictatorship that has sent into exile entire newsrooms, like La Prensa or Confidencial. The journalists who are still working in Nicaragua, they don't work publicly. They work like in a clandestine way. So I have been a journalist, a broadcast journalist for the past 25 years in my life. You cannot shoot in Nicaragua publicly. Recently, we did a video. As I said, I work also as a media consultant in partnership with a media outlet in Nicaragua, and it was honestly a headache to do, and for obvious reason, I would not go into details, but you have to have like a plan, like a contingency plan A, plan B, plan C, to do an interview. So it's really hard. Of course, it's our job, to get interviews, to try to communicate with the resources. The challenge is it's greater now, it's bigger now, because you have to like double check. You're not in the ground, so you have to like consult and talk to many sources, and you have to also protect your sources. That's the challenge that all journalists in Nicaragua who are reporting, like in at least 25 digital media outlets from exiles, that is the challenge they have, like double check, protect your sources. No journalists anymore sign their articles because you don't want to have reprisal. That's the word. Because, and besides that, the sources, of course, they speak to you in totally off the record, anonymously, because they don't want to go to jail. So it's harder to do journalism and to do good journalism in those circumstances. But those are the challenges that the journalists and digital media outlets in the case of Nicaragua, are facing, because what we don't want is that Nicaragua get, like without any information, because the dictatorship of President Ortega and Vice President, his wife, Rosario Murillo, they have all this propaganda machine, like they manage at least 5 TV channel. Some of them are controlled by their sons, by some of their sons, and they have tons of radio. But so they want to control and shut down all critic voices. So I think in a way, what all the media outlets like La Prensa, Confidencial, Divergentes, 100% Noticias, like all my colleagues are doing is, to keep reporting and denouncing the abuses. And this is like the first draft for, we know that at some point, like justice will come, because this regime has, according to a group of human rights experts of United Nations, the Ortega Murillo regime has committed, like crimes against humanity. And we know that at some point, all these special reports will be used, like as at the first draft of history. So that's why I think journalists, above all risk and above all difficulties, we are trying to put, what we can do, our collaboration. Because as I said, I'm just one of 200 journalists in exile who are trying to keep their voice alive.
Thank you for that, Lily. And I imagine that what you're sharing resonates with Muhammad John, just not just you, but also the rest of the panelists. Muhammad John, I imagine that you're hearing a lot of this also from the people that your NGO helps. And as someone who's actually found this, established a few different initiatives in exile, what is your primary advice to journalists? I mean, a little bit of what Masrat was saying, that she feels she's unable to do the work that she would like to. How can they best reestablish their presence in exile, or kind of recalibrate the type of work they're able to do? What would your advice be?
Thank you for the question, Preeti. Unfortunately, the journalism work is not pleasant work and job, and it's very stressful and pressured work. And unfortunately, people and the society are also not appreciating your work and what you do as a journalist. And also, you are facing when you become exiled, probably you were persecuted in your country, and when you are persecuted, it's meant you are, from escaping from some dictator and authoritarian regime. So the regime always have a stronger tools, persecute you in exile even. So as Lily said, about 150 to 200 journalists from Nicaragua are in exile. Similar situation with Tajikistan, about 150 to 100 Tajik journalists become exiled. And we have right now 20 journalists imprisoned in Tajikistan, sentenced from 21 years to 7 years, just for liking or commenting on social media. It is crime in Tajikistan. If you are liking or commenting exiled media, so you will face imprisonment in Tajikistan, or even subscription to the channels. And also, just going back to your question, so about 90% of journalists, when they become exiled, they will not continue the profession because of many reasons. I think the main reason is being persecuted back in home. So the government will went after your family, your relatives. They will publicly shame you, they will humiliate your relatives. For example, in Tajikistan, if you have a children or relatives at school, they will do public shaming, calling traitor, children of traitor or relative of traitor of the nation, and they confiscate your property if your relative have some job on the state bodies. They will resign them from the job. They will lose their job. So any kind of persecution you cannot imagine. So they are very.
Yes, I can imagine.
They are very creative, finding a way to persecute you, to silence journalism. So this is the problem. But when you decide to operate, so you have to accept this reality, challenge you are facing, the pain you're gonna be went through. But what I advise is, my advice is, first of all, to find, do not think like, let me first register institution and then to start my activity. No, do not condition your journalism activity to the formal, institution or title. Continue your work as possible, and then while you are reporting in exile, try to register institution or foundation or according to the country you are living and reporting. And then while you are continuing your work, try to reach out to the institution or foundation, grant funding organization which are supporting journalism activity. Unfortunately, many organizations, because of their old policy, they just mostly support on the ground journalism and media organization. When you reach out to them, they said, okay, we support media activities in Tajikistan or in Nicaragua, but we only support on the ground. When you explain, it is almost impossible to active on the ground. You cannot raise or report sensitive topics, but still it's difficult to convince them to receive support. The second problem for journalism to finding right institution to support you, which as you mentioned, the Civil Society Center in Prague and some right now NED, National Endowment for Democracy, they are also among little organizations supporting exiled activists and media. So first, continue your activities in exile. While you are reporting in exile, find the right form of organization, and then reach out to the institution which are supporting freedom of press and speech. Convince them to provide support for your work, and also the main important to have colleagues. And the last thing, while you are reporting, keep your source of information private. Do not share your freelance worker or reporter on the ground with anyone, not even with your colleagues. So it should be secret between you and your reporter, not second person. Even if your funding institution are requesting, I'm not advising to share their details with anyone, because their life will be in danger. Why? Tajikistan, they created central at the central bank watch list, and there were exiled media in Prague covering Tajikistan in Czech. So they look all transaction from Europe or specific country, because we don't have much citizens from Tajikistan living and working in Czech Republic or Poland. So they check all the transactions from this country, and maybe 100 or 1,000. So they find out, and they went after the journalists. 70 journalists, around 20 journalists were persecuted, and they were sentenced from 1 to 2 years for being in cooperation with exiled media. So also this is difficult to sending money, because they will find out, as I said, they will find many new ways to target journalism. So we have to be very careful to keep safe our colleagues on the ground. I hope you answer.
Absolutely. Thank you for those for presenting those realities, Mohammed John. One of the things that you mentioned, 80% of displaced journalists leaving the profession. That's alarming. And we're here today precisely to see how to keep journalists in their profession and for media outlets to continue running. So as a global journalism service program, our role is to ensure that, you know, specialized skills of reporters are nurtured. And Sonny, we're working together with you to do exactly that, to support a reporter working on a health beat. And so could you speak a little bit about the importance of collaborations, whether it's foundations, editorial organizations? How has that helped you? And could we do more? And how is that possible?
Totally. You know, we need all the help as much as we can get at this moment. You know, from capacity building to financial support to learning the technology. You know, I think Western organizations, media in the West, or the community in West, you know, whoever can actually unify and help this kind of situation in Myanmar. Or I think these my peers are having the same problem. Every time Lily is talking about it, it's exactly the same in Myanmar, and same for. Same in Muhammad's situation, and same in Masrat's situation. Same, you know, we can't even hold the camera. We get arrested, right? If our phones are installed, we install VPN in our phones, you can get into trouble. All the Facebook, Twitters, all the social security social platforms are blocked, banned in the country. But the thing is that you know. Not only getting the support, I think a collaboration with different newsroom. You know, so we've been doing the cross-border reporting with the Danish news outlet, and also with outlet in Germany, and we do this kind of reporting, cross countries reporting, and then we basically report. It's very important to collaborate because, you know, if you say we are a plant, I think our root has been cut, and our the flower has been cut, and you know, we are in a very vulnerable situation. So having a grant, having a training, having a technical support, they are very, very important for Exile media to actually survive and sustain. It's super important. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Totally agree.
Yes, and thank you for that description, because it's what you're talking about is that we need to reestablish roots, right? And those roots need to go deep for you to be able to survive. I just wanted to bring the attention of this group to a message from Viola about a new intergovernmental initiative called the Media Freedom Coalition. She's copy-pasted their link for us, and they're eager to get your input on how they could advocate on your behalf and within different country contexts. So thank you for that, Viola. And each of you has really, through your inspiring stories, laid out what these challenges are that you're facing and how you're still forming transborder communities and collaborations. And so I thought if each of you could take turns to reiterate to your audiences, whether they are policymakers, foundations, news organizations, other journalists, or simply engaged audiences, what they could do to better support your work. And I want to start with Masrat, because I know you're at a point in your career where you have a lot where you want to grow and expand. What is it that will help you continue staying in the profession? You're in the US at the moment. What are your immediate and long-term needs?
So right now, I'm looking to extend my visa because I can go back home upon my arrival. There are like strong apprehensions, getting arrested, and then I'll be in prison for 7 years, or getting killed because I have death threats also. And yeah, my passport will be confiscated. Recently, my family was harassed. Some of these government officials went to my home and asked my parents about my passport details, Xerox copy of my passport. So it's always that right now, this is not an option for me. So I would really love to work in the US because we are professional journalists. Our work is not only bound to our home countries. We can work anywhere in the world to support ourselves. And also it takes, like, as I said, mentioned earlier, that it really takes toll on the mental health. So I think there should be this organizational support at the organization who helps journalists who are in exile to navigate through the process, the legal processes, the like, or maybe like, because we go through a lot, then there should be something like a therapist who we can connect with, because like we don't know, like, because I came here, like I didn't came here by choice. It was like a forceful decision because everybody back home there's an enforced self-censorship. I'm self-censoring myself, what to do, where to go. There should be this organization who helps exiled journalists to help navigate the legal processes, where to get your visa. How to connect with. So right now I don't have an health insurance because my program ended last week, and then I have been diagnosed with some blood disorder. So there is no financial support, there is no organizational support, there is nothing. And then my visa will expire soon. So I don't know like where to go, who to ask for the help. I know there are many organizations who help journalists in exile, but we don't know like who to ask. There should be some organization who should help us navigate. Okay, where are you right now? What do you need? Do you need a lawyer? Do you need a health insurance or something? So there are these things, so you should follow these things. So yeah, I don't know who to approach right now because I want to extend my visa. So I'm on the J visa. So the department has no funds so that I can extend my J visa. I don't want to apply for the asylum because I want to work and go back to my home country, be the voice of my people. And yeah, I'm with this hope that's like someday also I don't want to restrict myself to a certain place. I just want to go and explore more options, working options. And then I know if I apply for the political asylum, it will restrict my work. So I want to be able to see my family. So yeah, I would love to like get connected with some people or some organizations who would help us to navigate through these processes.
And so this is really an open call to any journalists or an open request rather to any journalists or organizations that might be able to house Masrat in their newsroom. She would obviously be a fantastic addition to any workplace and provide the needed visa so she can continue to develop her career. That is not an easy situation to navigate, Masrat, and I personally would love to keep in touch with you and see if we can open any doors. Lily, just to add to that, I know that you're probably observing in a bit of dismay because this is such a tough situation. What is it that all of us in this community should be doing to help?
Well, I was listening to Sarah and I see in her, you know, like the dilemma that hundreds of journalists are facing too. So the thing is that in the case of Nicaraguan journalists, you know, like every case is different because, for example, Costa Rica has been like a more friendly process for journalist refugees. They can, you know, like travel. They have like kind of a stable process. Here in the state, it's more complex because some have gone through political asylum. I know colleagues that they have been waiting for a response for almost 4 years. So it's kind of hard. Others have go through the humanitarian parole mechanism, and others through a petition of relatives. So every case is different, but in every case, you know, like is the challenges are in multiple levels, you know, like are in legal levels, are in financial levels, you know, like for example, you know, like in our countries, you know, like I think that we all have a house, you know, like it's like here, you know, like just, you know, like just to pay rent, it's a huge challenge, you know, like in terms of it's not only, you know, like to sort of the media, the reported, how do you financially sustain the operation, but how do you financially survive as a journalist? So, and I wanted to say too that out of the 100 or 200 journalists who are in exile in Nicaraguan journalists, at least 30%, you know, like have left the profession because they need to survive. And the ones who are trying to keep doing journalists in exile, what they need, well, they need resources to continue working. They need grants. They need subscription. I think that collaboration, what one of colleagues mentioned, is crucial, but collaboration in different levels, you know, how international media outlets please keep in agenda, you know, like the crisis of our countries, because sometimes, for example, in Nicaragua, people say, but in Nicaragua, nothing is going on. Well, just yesterday, you know, like on World Press Freedom Day, at least one journalist was detained, and at least more than 20 citizens who are critics of the regimes were, we say it in Nicaragua, you're not arbitrarily detained, you're kidnapped, because the police doesn't say where they take you. They detain you arbitrarily at midnight. Just like a month ago, another journalist was detained, and he hasn't faced charges. Nobody knows where he is, Victor Ticay. Yesterday, it was detained another journalist, William Aragon, and now he has been, I think, well, released under condition, because now he's being accused of fake news. And just to close, you know, like this is like another third or fourth wave of repression that we are facing, because just this February, at least more than 222 former political prisoners, including 11 between journalists or media related workers, were deported to the States, to the United States, and the regime, the Ortega regime, canceled their citizenship, their Nicaraguan citizenship, saying that they were traitors to the country. A week after that, last February, at least 94 more Nicaraguans were canceled their nationality, including at least 11 or 12 journalists. So this is the thing that we're facing. And just to close, I resonate with Zara, you know, like journalists in exile, we are in different countries because in a way we want to continue our job. We want to continue doing journalism. I'm not saying that I don't know how to say that, we're not this is another category of immigrants, because you are in another country as a protection measure, you know, in order to continue doing your job. So it is important that governments in different countries where there are exiled journalists take like a special provision that this is another category. I don't know how to, I don't know if I explain myself
absolutely
well.
Lily, that it requires a specialized category, and it requires the assistance needed for early recovery so that the journalists can remain in their profession. And with that, I have just a couple of minutes left, and I really wanted to hear from Mohammed John with just some concluding thoughts. I know it's really not enough time to do justice to what you would have to say, but again, how can we better support journalists, maybe from the perspective from Poland and the European context?
Thank you for the question. First of all, we need protection and safety. So Tajikistan and Umali Rahman regime never received strong message to be punished or face punishment for his brutal crackdown on journalism, media freedom, activists, human rights defenders. In past 30 years, no one, human violators in Tajikistan subjected to smart sanctions. So I think the first thing, in order to show their straightening and right intention for the journalism, they have to nominate 1, 2, 3 state official Tajikistan human rights abuser to the global Magnitsky or any visa ban, any sanctions. And secondly, they have, Tajikistan is receiving unconditionally support from Western country without fulfilling his international commitment. So when the country is still receiving funding, financial support because of, scaring the world, we are under the attack, we are next to Afghanistan. But yesterday, Reporter Without Borders new ranking, it says that Tajikistan Freedom Press ranking is 153, which behind Afghanistan. Even Afghanistan under Taliban have better situation other than Tajikistan. But mostly people in the Western country think that, because Tajikistan dictator is secular dictator, they are better than, religious dictator in Afghanistan or Iran. But this is, just fake face. How to provide support for how to enhance, journalism activity in exile? My advice is rethink the strategy which was adopted years ago, because the situation since the war in Ukraine, pandemic has been changed. Since the Taliban took over, we see a lot of exiled journalists because they are fleeing their country. So they have to rethink the strategy, providing equal support for on-the-ground media and activities, NGOs and exiled. Don't have, I think we are not calling, stop funding on the ground media. No, still keep funding them. They are doing very important work on the ground, but also provide support for exiled media, because there are words and topics which on the ground media cannot raise those questions or topics. If they write about corruption, nepotism, kleptocracy, they will face jail in Tajikistan. But exiled media have free hand and more freedom to raise these sensitive topics. So the only thing, provide more support equally or partially equally, maybe 70% on the ground, just 20-30% for exiled media and activists and human rights defenders. That's would help to fight authoritarian countries' propaganda. This last war concluded because of the Russian aggression on Ukraine and because of Russian state media propaganda in Central Asia, in Tajikistan, 100 young Tajiks, both the narrative of Russia on Ukraine aggression, and they are joining Russian army because they think the Russia on the right side. We don't have any independent media in Tajikistan, so we only have a Russian media, Tajikistan state media, Iran and Afghanistan media because we speak Persian. So there are no independent media. That's why people trust and believe the propaganda. Whatever they receive, they believe. That's why they are joining the Russian army against war in Ukraine. So help us to provide alternative information for local audience. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mohammed John. I think what you said is super important, which is to recalibrate how we support media in exile and realizing that the links between the journalists on the ground and between exile media are increasingly important. And that's a bit of what we're trying to do at Report for the World by supporting reporters who are looking at open source investigations, tracking money trails while being outside the country because they're safer. And so that kind of support is super important in this period, and it will continue to be so. On that note, I'd like to hand over the mic to Rachel at the National Press Club. And thank you so much for hosting this event.
Thank you, Preeti, and to all of our panelists for that very frank, vulnerable, and eye-opening discussion. And thank you to all of you who are watching. My name is Rachel Oswald. I am the chairperson of the National Press Club's Press Freedom Committee, working with the club's Journalism Institute. As the nonprofit affiliate of the National Press Club, the Institute powers journalism in the public interest. We've recorded today's program, and a link to the video will be emailed to you all. So if you missed part of the discussion, don't worry, you'll have a chance to catch it a second time. Highlights from the program will also appear on our website and on our newsletter with the video. If you aren't yet already receiving the Institute's daily newsletter for journalists, you can subscribe now. If you found this program illuminating and beneficial, in addition to all of the other good suggestions the panelists offered, I hope you'll consider making a donation to the Journalism Institute. Your donation allows our small staff and mighty team of volunteers to continue to produce timely, thought-provocative, and deeply necessary professional development programs for journalists, and to continue to raise awareness about the importance of press freedom around the world. Thank you all, and because of what today is, may the 4th be with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all. I learned from all of you.
Bye. Be safe, everyone.